Friends, if you want to watch super hit movie Babygirl in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, West Film Friends. In today's video, the movie we're going to talk about is called Babygirl. I am also going to give you all the information on which platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. This video is produced by West Film. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it, all the interesting facts about this movie in today's video. I'm going to tell you apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film's storyline, star cast actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will give you a small review of the story of this film. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget, box office collection of this film. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end. So let's start the video. Babygirl is a 2024 American erotic thriller film written, directed, and produced by Halina Reijn. The film stars Nicole Kidman as a high-powered CEO who puts her career and family on the line when she begins an affair with a much younger intern, Dickinson. Sophie Wilde and Antonio Banderas also star. Babygirl premiered at the 81st Venice International, followed by a premiere at the 2024 Toronto International Film Festival on September 10th, 2024, with a wide theatrical release by A24 on December 25th, 2024. It received positive reviews and became a box office success, grossing $64.3 million on a $20 million budget. It was named one of the top 10 films of 2024 by the National Board of Review, where Kidman was also awarded the Best Actress prize. Romy Mathis, the CEO of a robotic process automation company in New York City, is dissatisfied with her sex life with her husband, Jacob, a theater director. While on the way to work one day, she is almost mauled by a dog until a young man stops and calms it down. That young man, Samuel, turns out to be an intern at Romy's company and picks Romy as his mentor through the company's mentorship program. Samuel propositions Romy during a private meeting. She objects, then gives in and kisses him. Initially conflicted about the incident, the two later meet at a hotel. Romy expresses concern that she may be taking advantage of Samuel due to their power difference, but Samuel explains to her that he is the one with the power, as he could get her fired with one phone call. Romy comes to an intense orgasm at the hotel in dominance and submission dynamic with Samuel, the dominant partner. However, Romy sobs with deep conflict about her enjoyment of this experience after the orgasm. The two continue to meet at multiple rendezvous, their sexual affair gaining considerable intensity. Samuel continues to push boundaries. In one instance, he appears at Romy and Jacob's country home, ingratiating himself with the entire family, under the pretense of returning Romy's laptop, which she left at the office. Feeling disrespected, Romy lashes out at Samuel, telling him that her family is everything to her and to never show up at her home again. The two argue, and Samuel says he will request a transfer to a different department, which Romy objects as she fears it will only stir questions about her role in his transfer request. Unable to handle the stress, Romy tells her husband that she is dissatisfied with their sex life and has never experienced an orgasm with him. Desperate, Romy meets with Samuel to convince him to continue their affair, but only after she confirms her submission to Samuel. Soon afterward, Samuel appears uninvited at her house again for her daughter's birthday party. He attends with Esme, Romy's secretary whom he is dating. Esme informs Romy that she knows about her affair with Samuel. She asks Romy to end the affair, make structural changes to the company, and promote Esme to prevent her from coming forward with what she knows. Romy later confesses the affair to Jacob, albeit describing it as a stranger and a one-night stand. She desperately reaches out to Jacob, expressing her intense sexual needs, but Jacob is more upset about the affair. Jacob walks into their country house sometime later to find Romy and Samuel together. He confronts Samuel in a fistfight, but then suffers a panic attack, with Samuel coming to his aid before finally leaving. After being encouraged by her teenage daughter Isabel, Romy and Jacob decide to rekindle their marriage and sex life. A board member informs Romy that Samuel has taken a new job in Japan. He asks if she had anything to do with Samuel leaving. seemingly implying he knows about the affair and invites her to his house when he is alone. Disgusted, Romy firmly states that she is unafraid of him and tells him to leave her office. In the final scene, Romy and Jacob are at home, having restarted their relationship. Together, they reenact the type of rough sex that Samuel introduced to Romy, although she is only able to orgasm by imagining Samuel playing with the dog in the hotel room that both Romy and Samuel shared earlier in the film. Cast Nicole Kidman as Romy Mathis, a CEO, Harris Dickinson as Samuel, Romy's intern, Antonio Banderas as Jacob Mathis, Romy's husband, Sophie Wilde as Esme Smith, Romy's assistant, Esther McGregor as Isabel Mathis, Romy and Jacob's teenage daughter, Vaughn Riley as Nora Mathis, Romy and Jacob's younger daughter. Production. Development. It was announced in November 2023 that David Hinojosa of 2AM was going to produce the project alongside Halina Reijn of Man Up Films, with A24 financing the project. Julia O, Zach Nutman, and Christine D'Souza Gelb of 2AM served as executive producers. It was later revealed that Julia O would take on the producer role, contrary to earlier reports that she would serve as an executive producer. In addition to her role as producer, Halina Reijn directed the film from a screenplay she wrote. The project marked Rein's second English-language feature film, both produced by A24. The original plan was to make a summer movie. However, it was changed to Christmas due to the impact of the 2023 WGA strike and 2023 SAG-AFTRA strike on the film's schedule. The film's workplace dynamics were influenced by cinematic elements from Indecent Proposal and Basic Instinct. The affair in the film was set in an American workplace because the stricter hierarchy and rules in the U.S., compared to Europe, was felt by the filmmaker to make such a relationship feel even more forbidden and taboo. Reijn was inspired to write the script after hearing about a woman who had never experienced an orgasm throughout her 25-year marriage. She added that her interest in exploring women's relationships with their bodies was a key motivator for making this movie. She also credited her passion for the erotic thrillers of the 1980s and 1990s, particularly those by directors Paul Verhoeven and Adrian Lyne, as the inspirational driving force behind her decision to make this film. Lizzie Talbot was hired as the intimacy coordinator. The film features a significant 24-year age gap between its lead characters, with Romy written as 49 and Samuel as 25. Interestingly, the real-life age difference between Nicole Kidman, 56 during filming, and Harris Dickinson, 27, was even greater. Reijn emphasized the importance of normalizing age gaps in relationships, particularly when women are the older partners, stating, "It should completely be normalized that the age gaps switch and that women have different relationships. We're not trapped in a box anymore." Dickinson noted that the limited pre-filming interaction between him and Kidman ultimately benefited the project, as it allowed them to build trust and work together with kindness, enhancing the authenticity of their on-screen dynamic. Kidman and Reijn built a strong bond while preparing for the film in New York, fostering trust and openness. They worked closely, revising scenes and sharing personal stories, creating a collaborative, intimate environment. Kidman credits Rein's supportive approach for helping her embrace the emotional and physical vulnerability required for the role. Casting. In November 2023, Kidman, Dickinson, Antonio Banderas, Sophie Wilde, and Jean Reno were announced as part of the cast. Other cast members included John Senatiempo, Vaughan Riley, Victor Slezak, Anoop Desai, and Maxwell Whittington Cooper. Esther McGregor was reported to star. Filming. Principal photography began in December 2023 in New York City and wrapped in February 2024. Music. On December 2, 2024, Sky Ferreira announced the release of Leash, a song written and co-produced by her for the soundtrack of the film. The film's score was composed by Cristobal Tapia de Veer and was released digitally on December 25, 2024 through A24 Music. The film features INXS's 1988 single, Never Tear Us Apart. A24 struggled to secure the rights to the track, which Reijn complained about to Kidman, who personally secured the rights within a couple of days. Release. Theatrical Babygirl premiered at the 81st Venice International Film Festival on August 30th, 2024. Following this, it was also premiered at the 49th Toronto International Film Festival on September 10th, 2024. The film was initially set for a release in the United States and Canada on December 20th, 2024, but the date was later shifted to December 25th, 2024 for its theatrical debut. Home media. Babygirl was released in the United States on VOD on January 28, 2025. The film is set to be released on Max on April 25, 2025. The movie was released on Blu-ray and 4K from A24 on March 18, 2025. Reception. Box office. On January 30th, 2025, A24 announced that Babygirl had exceeded $50 million in global box office revenue, securing its place among the studio's top 10 highest-grossing films worldwide. As of March 20th, 2025, Babygirl has grossed $28.1 million in the United States and Canada and $36.1 million in other territories, for a total of $64.3 million worldwide. The film's break-even point was reported around $50 million. In the United States and Canada, Babygirl was released alongside Nosferatu, A Complete Unknown, and The Fire Inside, and was projected to gross around $7 million from 2,115 theaters in its 5-day opening weekend. The film made $1.5 million on its first day and then $1.3 million on its second. It went on to debut to $4.4 million in its opening weekend and a total of $7.3 million over the 5 days, finishing in 7th. It then made $1.4 million on the first day of 2025 for a total of $10.5 million over its first 8 days of release. The film enjoyed a stronghold in its second weekend, dropping just 0.5% to $4.5 million. It fell by 31% and earned $3.1 million, finishing 8th in its third weekend with a reduction in theaters. The film dropped only 36% and earned a solid $1.9 million, finishing 11th in the fourth weekend despite losing 427 theaters and playing across just 1,460 theaters. It managed to earn $812.3 on the fifth weekend with only 777 theaters, finishing 14th. The film grossed $330.8 in 308 theaters in its sixth weekend, finishing 20th. The film earned $118 on 152 screens on the seventh weekend, placing 26th. The film had a re-release date on Valentine's Day with more theaters than previous week, 262 screens, earning 92.7 caters on the 8th weekend, placing 25th. It scored 13.1 caters on the 9th weekend, placing 38th with only 25 theaters. In the UK and Ireland, where the film was released on January 10, 2025, it made $5.1 million from January 3 February 6, 2025, and placed 8th. The film achieved strong performance in international markets, with notable success in countries such as Ukraine, the Netherlands, Denmark, Poland, Romania, France, Spain, Belgium, and Luxembourg. Home media performance. In its debut week on PVOD in the US, the film was the top-rented title, placing 3rd on iTunes and 6th on Fandango. It placed 8th on iTunes for the second week. Critical response. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 76% of 254 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 6.910. The website's consensus reads, Nicole Kidman and Dickinson memorably smolder together in Babygirl, with writer-director Halina Rein's clinical gaze keeping this sexually frank thriller more provocative than prurient. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 79 out of 100, based on 55 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of B on an A+ to F scale, while those surveyed by PostTrack gave it a 67% overall positive score, with 38% saying they would definitely recommend it. Michelle Goldberg of the New York Times observed that, on the cusp of our terrible new era, it felt, for all its darkness and perversity, like an artifact of a more optimistic moment, when equality seemed close enough at hand that the orgasm gap between men and women, something the movie's director, Halina Reijn, often talks about in interviews, could be a subject of serious concern. Damon Wise of Deadline Hollywood praised the performance of Kidman as she really goes the distance, imbuing Romy with a psychological vulnerability that is missing from the film. It most obvious sounds like 50 Shades of Grey, and presenting a unique reversal of the film, it most obviously looks like Secretary. He also mentioned Dickinson's performance as an inspired piece of casting, manifesting like a monster from the id with his dorky knife and fork haircut and clothes that he appears to have put on with a shovel. Nicholas Barber of the BBC lauded Rein's gritty, indie-style direction in Babygirl, highlighting how she avoids the usual Hollywood neo-noir gloss, choosing instead to expose the raw, unpolished truth behind moments like the intern's arrival at the family's retreat or the co-worker's discovery of the affair. Barber also praised Kidman for delivering a bold and captivating performance, describing it as one of her most daring and impactful in years. David Rooney of The Hollywood Reporter called out the film as sexy, dark, and unpredictable, and praised the cast performance. He mentioned Dickinson was a magnetic screen presence. Kidman was in spectacular form, swinging from outrage to fear to ravenously lustful consent. Wilde brought sly notes of humor. Richard Lawson of Vanity Fair praised the overall film as Reijn creates the sense that we are watching test subjects through a two-way mirror. This doesn't necessarily make the proceedings any less interesting, but one does maybe crave a bit more heat from a movie that is so willing to tackle intimate matters. In a more critical review, Zan Brooks of The Guardian stated, "For all its excited carnality and seesawing power struggles, the film's thrills feel machine-tooled and vacuum-packed. Babygirl rolls off the track looking almost as neat and anonymous as a box from Tensiles, the fictional tech company upstate delivery warehouse." However, he commended Kidman's bright, bold performance as it carries a top note of distress, as though she is not entirely convinced by everything she signed up for. In contrast, Owen Gleiberman of Variety praised the overall film as a shrewdly honest and entertaining movie about a flagrantly wrong sadomasochistic affair, and he termed Kidman's performance fearless. He later concluded that Kidman had the best performance by a female actor in 2024. Robbie Collin of The Telegraph praised the film, noting that it is sharp enough and hot enough. He highlighted Nicole Kidman's performance as ferociously good, convincing utterly as this formerly level-headed careerist whose deeply buried, long-denied appetites are simultaneously proving her making and downfall. Alison Wilmore of Vulture described the film as a self-love story, emphasizing that part of its message is about the importance of allowing oneself to be vulnerable and to let yourself be small for a while. Glenn Kenny of RogerEbert.com praised Kidman's performance, but the film itself did not convince him. Kidman has garnered kudos for an uninhibited and daring performance, but when has she ever shied away from uninhibited and daring performances? I love to see them always, but I love to see them even more in good movies. Kevin Marr of The Times mentioned that, like the best BDSM experiences, they say, is slightly contrived but very satisfying. Radhika Seth of Vogue acknowledged that the film is not for everyone, dividing critics and even premiere attendees. However, she praised Antonio Banderas, Nicole Kidman, Halina Reijn, and Cristobal Tapia de Veer for their standout contributions to the film. Ben Kroll of The Wrap said that despite hints at deeper themes and narratives, the film stands out for its surprising absence of cynicism. Martin Tsai of Collider noted that while the film does elicit some laughs, whether intentional or not, it ultimately feels more demeaning for Nicole Kidman than Dogville. He pointed out that Catherine Breillat had already addressed similar themes more skillfully in Last Summer, and criticized Reijn for lacking the nuance needed to elevate the film into something more meaningful. Stephanie Zacharek of Time called out that this was one of Kidman's finest performances in a long career of more than 40 years, 94, while Carla Meyer of Los Angeles Times considered Kidman's performance was an Oscars worthy. Concurred with that, Peter Travers of ABC News mentioned that Kidman's daring is now the stuff of legend. Nick Shager of the Daily Beast mentioned that the film featured a standout performance from Kidman as a woman on a daring quest for self-discovery and fulfillment, and delivered a bold and entertaining cinematic jolt. Richard Roper of Chicago Sun-Times praised Banderas' performance as he served as a steady presence, with a standout moment later in the story showcasing his formidable acting prowess. Accolades. The film appeared on multiple filmmakers, critics, and editors' lists of the best films of 2024, including the film score was also on the shortlist for 2024 Academy Award for Best Original Score. Nicole Kidman and Dickinson were recognized in the 2024 BAFTA longlists for Best Actress in a Leading Role and Best Actor in a Supporting Role, respectively. Kidman and Dickinson were also named one of the best performances in film in 2024 by Rolling Stone and IndieWire, respectively. Awards and nominations, cultural impact. The film gained attention in the U.S. for its milk scene and the resurgence of George Michael's father figure. Kidman humorously recreated the milk scene during her acceptance speech for Best Actress at the National Board of Review Awards. At the 2025 Critics' Choice Awards, Chelsea Handler and Ralph Fiennes brought a touch of humor and homage to the ceremony by also recreating the milk scene moment. Many fans of the film recreated moments on social media, such as Dickinson dancing to George Michael's father figure, or Kidman being commanded to stand in the corner before lying on the floor. Initially popular with older women, its audience has expanded to nearly equal gender representation. In Spain, it has sparked discussions on mature female representation, while in Ukraine and Denmark, mental health professionals use it to explore female sexuality and aging. The film offered a fresh perspective, standing out amidst the wave of Me Too-themed content that has dominated recent years. The film added to the evolving portrayal of older women in cinema, challenging the stereotypical bitter older woman trope. This shift aligned with a broader trend in recent films that focus on characters over 40, offering more nuanced and diverse representations. Babygirl review. Babygirl isn't a romantic comedy or a romance or even a comedy, though it concerns matters of the heart and has a friskily impolite sense of humor. Set over what seems like a very long Christmas season, it centers on Romy, a transfixing Nicole Kidman, a married woman who enters a dominant, submissive affair that almost consumes her. It's a story about women, bodies, and the regulation of both, and what it means when a woman surrenders her most secret self. All of which is to say, it's also about power, but with kinks. Romy is the chief executive of a slick, growing robotics company that, from its videos, seems to provide warehouse automation. Presumably, the robots moving goods around will eventually make human labor redundant. In the meantime, they serve as a hardworking metaphor for a woman who's rationalized every aspect of her existence. At her New York apartment, she dresses for another high-flying workday, but then slips on a frowsy apron as she packs her children's lunches with handwritten notes. The lack of hired help is an off detail. The apron seems so incongruent with her job and the frictionless perfection of her domestic realm that her puzzled husband, Jacob, Antonio Banderas, asks about it. The writer-director Halina Reijn, Bodies, 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 is just as scrupulously attentive to detail as Romy. With sensitivity to the gilded surfaces of Romy's life, and with a series of brisk, narratively condensed scenes, the filmmaker sketches in a woman who presents an aspirational ideal, from her glossy lipstick to her teetering heels. Yet while the ceiling-to-floor windows of Romy's importantly situated office announce that she's a contemporary woman with nothing to hide, you know better. By the time Romy first breezes into work, you have already watched her sprint naked from her post-coital bed, where Jacob is sleeping the deep, contented sleep of the satiated, so she can secretly masturbate to online pornography. The movie's opener is a grabber. The first shot in the movie is a close-up of Romy seemingly on the orgasmic verge, and not only because Kidman bares her lovely apple-cheeked rear as her character bolts down the hall. From the moment that the actress's backside and coltish legs are gliding through the hushed darkness of Romy's tastefully luxurious apartment, the movie seems to be invoking Stanley Kubrick's 1999 erotic drama, Eyes Wide Shut. In that hallucinatory film, which also opens at Christmas time, Kidman plays a married woman who sends her husband, Tom Cruise, spiraling after she tells him about her unconsummated desire for another man. "I was ready to give up everything," she says. In Babygirl, female desire opens another Pandora's box of trouble. As in a lot of romantic comedies, the meet-cute in Babygirl has been strategically orchestrated. Romy is rushing to work on a day like any other when she's stopped in her tracks by the sight of a dog ferociously attacking someone. Visibly shook, she continues to watch Frozen as a tall, dark-haired young stranger sharply commands the dog, which instantly stops its attack and nuzzles him. Romy is impressed, though not altogether for obvious reasons. In short order, it becomes clear that she too wants a firm hand, to nuzzle the commanding stranger and be commanded in turn. In a coincidence that strains credulity, suggesting that this story may also be a kind of fantasy, the dog-wrangling stranger shows up at Romy's office. One of a gaggle of new interns, Samuel, Harris Dickinson, immediately catches her eye once more, an attraction that, as testy flirting boss talk gives way to furtive, hungrily submissive embraces, quickly evolves into something far more freighted than an ill-advised workplace liaison. Unlike the character in Eyes Wide Shut, Romy takes the leap into annihilating desire, risking everything in an affair that reverses her and Samuel's work dynamic. As she waits on all fours, he takes lead. Reijn handles the affair discreetly, using evocative choreography, softly beautiful lighting, and carefully deployed depth of focus to intimate more than she reveals. Your mileage will vary, of course, but the results are more dreamily sexy romantic than scorching, which seems to reflect Rein's larger concerns. Romy may have certain needs, but the filmmaker is less concerned with the specifics of dominance and submission, in ritualized sexual favors, leashes, and all the rest, and more focused on power, women, pleasure, and unbounded desire. In several montage sequences, you see Romy and Samuel testing and discovering each other. You also see two people who have briefly slipped off the restraints of everyday life. It's an enjoyable liberation story of a kind, even if Romy's search for existential freedom proves disappointingly limited. Hers isn't the soul-crushing bummer that, say, Ibsen's Hedda Gabler is, but Romy's and the story's horizons remain narrow. Even so, Reijn and her performers, including Sophie Wilde as Romy's employee, Esme, consistently edge this material into deeper waters, which allows you to consider other possibilities for them. For her part, Kidman takes Babygirl to its breaking point with a performance that risks your laughter, in which, as she dismantles her character's perfection piece by piece, exposes a raw vulnerability that can be shocking. It's the rawest thing in this movie, and it's bliss. Romy Mathis owns a duplex apartment in the city and a big house in the country. She has a doting husband, 2 adorable daughters, and a gilded career as the CEO of Tensile, a non-specific robot business that runs a successful warehouse delivery scheme. Romy, in the parlance of a women's glossy magazine, has it all, which naturally means that she wants something else, something more. Before long, she has embarked on a perilous affair with her office intern, jumping him in the gents to the strains of INXS's Never Tear Us Apart. Romy is played by Nicole Kidman, whose bright, bold performance nonetheless carries a top note of distress, as though she is not entirely convinced by everything she signed up for. She is the star of Halina Rein's film, which premieres here in Venice, and might have been this year's Tar, that other big drama about a powerful woman laid low, were it not so superficially pleased with itself, so thrilled by its own daring. Babygirl has some useful and occasionally provocative things to say about inner office dynamics and sexual desire, but it delivers them with the clipped, perky professionalism of an annual corporate presentation. The film opens with an orgasm and closes with another, although it turns out that the first climax was faked because Romy has never been truly satisfied by her spouse. She confesses to having dark thoughts, masturbates compulsively to her laptop, and hungers for an adventure to get her out of her rut. This explains why she's so drawn to Samuel, Harris Dickinson, a 20-something gopher at Tensile's New York office whose puckish self-assurance hangs just the right side of insolence. The intern wants her to mentor him. He wants whatever he can get. Arriving at work one morning, Romy sees him taming a wild dog on the street. Just maybe, she thinks, he can tame her as well. Like Romy's first climax, the picture is a burlesque, a performance, expertly done but suspect at its core. Reijn, a Dutch-born director now based in New York, enjoyed a breakout hit with the punchy Bodies, Bodies, Bodies in 2022, but this film is less satisfying and at times rather silly. Now, Romy and Samuel are locked in a torrid and toxic affair. He is feeding her saucers of milk to the strains of George Michael's father figure, while her poor husband, Jacob, Antonio Banderas, is left wrangling the kids and trying to direct his latest off-Broadway show. The power balance shifts. Samuel starts to think he's the boss. He points out that he has a crucial hold over Romy and that all it would take is one phone call to instantly end her career. "Does it turn you on when I say that?" he asks with a grin. And she's so spun around by this point that yes, it probably does. Is it a spoiler to mention that Romy and Samuel's adventure doesn't necessarily end well? There is no neat happy ending for our lust-struck lovers. Just more mess, more stress, and eventually a screaming row beside the Christmas tree. Rein's drama deserves credit for its lack of cheap moralizing and suggests that even the most reckless affair can bring unforeseen benefits. But it's too little too late, and for all its excited carnality and seesawing power struggles, the film's thrills feel machine-tooled and vacuum-packed. Babygirl rolls off the track looking almost as neat and anonymous as a box from Tinsel's upstate delivery warehouse. One of the many reasons that sex scenes in movies have faded as a phenomenon is the omnipresence of pornography. When people can just click on their deepest kinks and favored objects of desire, who needs the carefully staged R-rated erotic version? As if to acknowledge this, Babygirl, a drama about a dangerous office liaison written and directed by Halina Reijn, Bodies, 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 opens with a high-angle close-up of Nicole Kidman straddling an unseen man and panting with pleasure. It looks and sounds a lot like the kind of movie sex scene that would have once been described as hot. But as soon as the coupling is over and the man, Antonio Banderas as Kidman's husband, says, "I love you," we see Kidman escape to another room. Easy to do in their gargantuan Manhattan apartment, at which point she breathlessly lies down on the floor in front of her laptop and masturbates to a grungy piece of incest porn. The joke of this is that Kidman's character, Romy, is presented as a woman who has it all. She's the CEO of her own company, an e-commerce outfit called Tensile Automation, a kind of next-level Amazon that promises one-day delivery by using automated logistics, i.e. the entire warehouse is operated by robotics. She's got her nice, caring, supportive husband, who's a prominent New York theater director, as well as two vibrant teenage daughters, Esther McGregor and Vaughn Riley. And she's got her healthy, normal sex life and her secret transgressive fantasies, which are what really get her off. In other words, she has it all. She just doesn't have it all in one place. Early on, we see Romy in the office and in the mission statement videos she makes for the company, where every upbeat word is market tested, including a reference to how nurturing the company is, even though its all-robot premise basically results in putting people out of work. The way Romy sees it, she's liberating them from menial jobs. The movie offers up a sly take on what's happening in corporate culture today, though what gives that its kick is the way that it all connects to Romy's pent-up sexuality and to the forbidden office hookup that's about to ensnare her. Romy, with her friendly professional demeanor, her eyes glued to the information stream coming out of her phone, is the boss as highly functional control freak. What she's craving underneath it all is the kind of sexuality that's going to break that control apart. And the implication of Babygirl is that it isn't just Romy. The movie presents us with a society increasingly rooted in technology and the lockstep of corporate protocols where everything is controlled, which just feeds everyone's desire to bust out of it. The young man who's going to ignite Romy's fantasies is Samuel Harris Dickinson, one of the company's new slate of interns. That's right, this is a movie about a 50-something boss who falls into an affair with a work dude who's barely out of college. If Babygirl had been made 20 years ago, the movie would probably have been conceived as a cougar fantasy. The first time Romy and Samuel saw each other, it would have been all about their animal magnetism. But Reijn does something shrewder than that. The two characters meet when the interns are given a tour of Tensel's sprawling lower Broadway office suite. They're paraded into Romy's office, at which point Samuel asks her an incredibly rude question about the company's robot premise. Dickinson, the gifted actor from The Iron Claw and Triangle of Sadness, his baby face set off by a jagged haircut, is like a more blunt-edged Austin Butler. His Samuel is telling Romy before they've barely glanced at each other, "I make the rules by breaking yours." And that's what's sexy. These are great-looking actors, yet in Babygirl, their chemistry is only about, the promise of transgression. Each time Samuel sees Romy at the office, he confronts her with another casually hostile negging remark. He shoots past all niceties and small talk. His flirting is an aggro assault, and that's why she can't resist it. Babygirl turns into a shrewdly honest and entertaining movie about a flagrantly wrong sadomasochistic affair. In Bodies, 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 Reijn created a tone of overwrought satirical slasher pulp, but here she settles into a far more realistic mode and brings it off with flair. The movie is reminiscent at times of Fair Play, but it's also a tale of adultery that pushes genuine emotional buttons the way Unfaithful did 20 years ago. And that's rooted in the fearless performance of Kidman. Straddling the identities of mother, boss, defiant adulterer, and trembling sexual supplicant, she's like a walking mood ring. Her Romy takes off from a long-standing, hidden reality that people who are hooked on wielding power can have primal fantasies of being sexually submissive. For decades, prominent male executives have been keeping B&D sex workers in business, but in movies, we haven't seen the corporate gender tables turned in quite this way. For a while, Babygirl comes on like a less glossy 9.5 weeks as Samuel breaks down Romy's defenses, notably in a scene where people from the office are having cocktails after work and he sends her over a drink of milk. He's saying, "You're my baby girl." And when she drinks it down, she's saying, "Yes, I am." When they meet in a hotel room, Kidman goes back and forth between submission and refusing to submit, and the play of emotions on her face is astonishing. She lets us see the erotic war that's tearing Romy apart. But of course, what's dangerous about this affair isn't just the S&M kink of it. It's that Romy is trashing every corporate rule that now governs relationships in the workplace. And the shrewdest trick of the movie is the way Samuel uses those protocols and the breaking down of them to seduce Romy into crossing the line. The fact that she's having an affair with an intern from her own company, risking everything that she's built, is part of the turn-on. The spark plug of Kidman's performance is that she plays this sick recklessness as something fully human. The expression of a woman too compartmentalized to put the different parts of herself together. She's caught up in an erotic fever, but it's one that's laced with agony. Does it all come tumbling down? Babygirl has a conventional design and one very good eye-candy needle drop, in which the tattooed Samuel snake dances to George Michael's father figure. But one of the film's strengths is that it avoids the sort of roller coaster last act that we expect from an erotic thriller. There's an old-school moralism at work in movies like Fatal Attraction, where the characters are punished for their sins. Reijn is after something different. She's out to liberate characters who are too busy punishing themselves. Babygirl takes a few turns we don't expect, but that's because the movie's ambition isn't just to feed the thriller engine. It's to capture something genuine about women's erotic experience in the age of control. The first 5 minutes of Halina Reijn's Babygirl tell you everything you need to know about Romy, Nicole Kidman, or at least everything relevant to her ensuing erotic adventure. Romy and her husband Jacob, Antonio Banderas, have sex, and it appears to be a mutually ecstatic experience. She then sneaks down the hallway to watch porn in the bathroom, finishing herself off in secret. This appears on the surface to be familiar erotic thriller territory, where unruly sexual impulses threaten to topple a perfect marriage, even though we've literally just seen that it is not perfect. Because Babygirl opens this way, we do not have to suffer through interminable scenes where Romy and Jacob are presented as a perfect couple busy with work and children, unaware of the danger inside the perimeter of the proverbial white picket fence. Babygirl is savvier than that. It's also funnier than that. Reijn is going after something a little bit deeper than woman's happy home life destroyed by her uncontrollable sexual desires. Romy is the founder and CEO of a company that develops robotics for warehouse delivery systems, removing the need for humans. Jacob is a theater director rehearsing a production of Hedda Gabler, which is not coincidentally a urtext for women trapped in unhappy marriages. When characters have metaphor-heavy jobs, you know there's trouble in paradise. Babygirl wastes no time. Romy first sees Samuel, Harris Dickinson, on a crowded city sidewalk, taking control of an off-leash dog. She is riveted by his calm, firm gestures. Later that day, he is part of the cluster of interns brought into her office. He looks at her with a disturbing lack of subservience. He looks at her like he's an equal. His presence and his attitude throw her off. In their initial one-on-one interaction, Samuel tosses out the observation that he thinks she likes to be told what to do. The moment is shocking. His comment is so inappropriate it knocks the wind out of her. He senses the truth she's been hiding and goes right for it, speaks right to it. He's not manipulative. He's straightforward. This is such unexpected behavior from an intern she can't gather up a defense. Besides, she's into it, and he knows it. Soon, she's addicted to this thing with Samuel, all while being at war with her impulses. She doesn't understand sex as a game involving explicitly stated consent. It's totally foreign to her. Samuel has to explain the concept of consent to her, and let me tell you, his definition is better than Christian Gray's. Samuel gets it. Marlene Dietrich once observed, "In America, sex is an obsession. In other parts of the world, it's a fact." This explains a lot about America's schizophrenic relationship to sex and how this is reflected in American cinema. Our current cinematic moment is bafflingly sexless, which inhibits all kinds of genres, not just erotic ones. Juvenile sex humor is sometimes allowed. 50 Shades of Grey was deceptive. Yes, there was kinky sex, but it was legitimized by a wedding ceremony, showing a puritanical need to put a container around dark sexual impulses. The absence of sex is evidence of the obsession with it. If sex is just a fact, however, then it doesn't have the same threatening power. In Babygirl, both obsession and fact are in operation. To Romy, sex is an obsession. To Samuel, sex is a fact. This year's The Feeling That the Time for Doing Something Has Passed, written and directed by Joanna Arno, who also stars, is about a submissive woman, and it shows how it's really tough to find a dom who is not also a psycho or just a jerk pretending to be a dom. The tone of Arno's film is extreme deadpan, whereas Babygirl's tone is that of a comic opera. But the frankness with which these things are discussed in both films is a breath of fresh air. Kidman plays Romy at a fever pitch, and she is very effective. But Harris Dickinson is the real star here. If Samuel wasn't portrayed in the exact right way, the whole delicate thing would fall apart. The performance is not really a revelation because Dickinson has been distinguishing himself from the moment he arrived back in 2017 in Eliza Hittman's Beach Rats, 2017. In Steve McLean's Postcards from London, Dickinson showed his willingness to appear in experimental material and, most importantly, to be objectified by the camera and others. He was the object of desire in that film, as well as in Xavier Dolan's Matthias and Maxime, where his aggressively hetero behavior hinted at protesting too much. With Triangle of Sadness, he played a male model, leaning into what was already obvious. In all films, he brought to the table a calm sense of being aware of what he looks like, aware people are looking at him, and he is fine with allowing it. This is a very rare quality in male actors. Richard Gere had it. In Scrapper, one of my favorite films of 2023, Dickinson played a young guy who abandoned his daughter at birth and returned when she was 12. Even though you could judge the character, he was such an open-faced, big, goofy guy it was hard to be mad at him. Dickinson has reached another exciting level with Babygirl. We get only a few glimpses of Romy's childhood. She grew up in what she calls a commune cult and does EMDR therapy a couple of times a week. Trauma is implied, but not explained. Since this element is barely developed, it felt unnecessary and didn't really add to any understanding of Romy's motivations. To repeat, everything you need to know about Romy happens in the first 5 minutes. Cristobal Tapia de Vere's original score is symphonic and often gigantic, creating a portentous mood, which somehow manages to avoid self-seriousness. The needle drops are memorable, particularly the use of IXS's Never Tear Us Apart, and the scene where a shirtless post-coital Samuel holding a glass of scotch dances around the posh hotel room to George Michael's father figure. His movements slow and languid, aware he's on display, dancing to please himself, and knowing he's pleasing to her. The moment is mesmerizing. Cinema history is full of erotic thrillers about big business CEOs starting steamy situationships with someone younger and/or lower on the totem pole of power. It's often men in the role of said power. With the gender flip presented, Halina Rein's Babygirl takes a far more interesting direction. Instead of exploring the limits and consequences of what would happen if a woman CEO went on her kinky shit, becoming a Christian Grey herself, she poses the question, aren't you tired of being girl boss? Don't you just want to go baby girl? In Babygirl, Reijn explores the idea of docility we all play with, whether in our daily lives or the bedroom, and how that can keep us from pleasure. It's telling, mainly due to the sublime Nicole Kidman's expressions, that Romy's power has prevented her from getting what she wants. There's the pressure of always being logistical rather than impulsive. She experiences that safety in every facet of her life, especially with sex with her husband, leaving her feeling hollow. That notion becomes more interesting when Samuel rocks her world, turning her on with his blunt, commanding attitude. Before they have sex for the first time, Romy seems to have more of an inner battle with herself than with Samuel. She has a left and right brain civil war in real time, while Samuel watches confused. Reijn refrains from hitting any traditionalist beat you'd expect, even when characters inevitably uncover the affair, while never shaming, punishing, or villainizing its lead for exploring that side of herself. It's what makes Babygirl feel so nuanced. Additionally, the film is enhanced by touches of realism in the character illustrations, which add to the eroticism. Both parties are often unsure about each other's willingness to explore this subdom affair. Samuel may possess a blunt demeanor, but he's so neurodivergent and Romy struggles with her self-control. When their weirdo asses interact romantically, it's awkward, yet it's so inviting because it feels realistic. It adds dimension to Kidman and Dickinson's intoxicating chemistry, making you sweat before their bodies even touch. Halina Rein's 2022 English language debut, Bodies, 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 was a slender but enjoyably nasty slasher whodunit that poked around in its Gen Z characters' heads. The Dutch director's more complex new film, Babygirl, is an erotic thriller that again considers the ways in which young people are wired differently, knowing what they want and how to get it, but maybe also what the rest of us want too. That's more of a cheeky side note, however, in the story of a middle-aged woman, played with physical and psychological fearlessness by Nicole Kidman, finding liberation by surrendering to her repressed desires. Sexy, dark, and unpredictable, with a tone that mixes tension and caustic humor, the movie occupies a thematic landscape not so distant from Rein's 2019 debut feature, Instinct, about a female prison therapist drawn into a risky infatuation with a rapist. As in that film, Babygirl repeatedly asks who's in control in a dangerous game of seduction that keeps shifting the lines in its consideration of desire, gender roles, and power dynamics. There are also distinct shades of Steven Shainberg's Secretary, though the perspective here is very much female. Kidman plays Romy Mathis, CEO of a New York automation firm whose latest development is a goods delivery system for Amazon-type warehouses. She has 2 teenage daughters, Isabel, Esther McGregor, and Nora, Vaughn Riley, and a successful theater director husband, Jacob, Antonio Banderas, whom she straddles naked and rides to a gasping climax in the attention-getting opening scene. We soon learn that part of Romy's role in the bedroom is performative, when she flits down the hall after Jacob falls asleep and brings herself to orgasm watching daddy porn. In a later scene, she encourages her husband to be more aggressive in their sex play, which mostly makes him giggle with embarrassment. Right off the bat, Reijn establishes that Romy, despite a few brittle edges, is no one's cliched picture of a driven businesswoman. Instead of the usual power suits, she wears luxe cashmere wrap coats and sash collar dresses and blouses in floaty fabrics and delicate prints, subtly hinting that she's a woman of many layers. She also treats her staff decently, though her admiring executive assistant, Esme, Sophie Wilde, is frustrated in her attempts to talk about her prospects for promotion. Romy is all about careful control, so she's caught off guard when Samuel, Harris Dickinson, a fresh recruit in the intern program, puts her on the spot with a question about the compatibility of automation and sustainability. Samuel has already caught her eye outside the office when she watches him step in and calm a barking dog that's off its leash and scaring everyone else on the sidewalk. While it's slightly on the nose, that dog incident will be wryly echoed in developments to come. Subsequent encounters with Samuel confirm, in both his loose body language and his blunt words, that he's not intimidated by Romy's position. At the office holiday party, he informs her that he's chosen to partner with her in the mentor program. And despite her insistence that she's too busy to participate, Romy shows up for their scheduled 10-minute meeting. As Samuel questions her about how she got her start and what path brought her to where she is today, the subject of power comes up. He throws her for a loop when he casually observes, "I think you like to be told what to do." That inappropriate remark ends the meeting, but Samuel blocks her at the door with a kiss. There's some amusing cat-and-mouse negotiation, including a hilariously impudent gesture from Samuel during an office drinks evening. But soon he gets down to business, leaving her a note summoning her with an address and time. That first assignation, in a tacky hotel clearly way below Romy's standards, shows her bristling and resisting Samuel's advances, claiming she's only there to put a stop to his behavior. But she's not convincing and he's not deterred. Nor is he averse to the blackmail suggestion of an HR call to get the upper hand. Reijn knowingly teases out this setup like a 90s sexual stalker thriller, an inspiration furthered by DP Jasper Wolf's sharp visuals, but keeps upending those expectations. Working with great discipline and with zero timidity, the writer-director is unafraid to provoke feminist indignation by revealing Romy's complicity in her subjugation. Watching Kidman hike up her elegant gown to get on all fours and lap up a saucer of milk is both horrifying and funny. Samuel should, by rights, be a creep, but his cocky behavior is also awkward and uncertain, with nervous laughter when she doesn't immediately comply with his demands. As their sexual trysts become more frequent, he shows sensitivity toward her vulnerabilities and an instinct for her needs, eventually exposing a few of his own. Dickinson's unforced intensity makes him a magnetic screen presence, and although he imbues Samuel with an element of threat, the actor never lets us mistake him for a predator or crazy control freak. He hasn't exuded this much undiluted sexuality since Beach Rats. Kidman is in spectacular form, swinging from outrage to fear to ravenously lustful consent. The constant shifts in control during a steamy night they spend together, this time at a high-end hotel clearly chosen and paid for by Romy, have her in submissive mode 1 minute, swallowing her shame while stripping naked, and sitting back in a plush robe the next, admiring Samuel as he dances shirtless in the middle of the room. The winking song choice, George Michael's father figure, is one of a handful of punchy needle drops, along with Robin's Dancing on My Own and INXS's Never Tear Us Apart, that augment a fabulously eclectic, mood-shaping score by Chilean-born Canadian composer Cristobal Tapia de Veer. Eventually, the stop-start clandestine relationship does threaten to destroy what's dearest to Romy. At home, when she makes a partial confession to Jacob, talking evasively of having dark thoughts in her head since she was a child, and at work after it emerges that Samuel is also seeing Esme. Wild, the Australian discovery from Talk to Me, brings sly notes of humor to Esme's power play when she uses knowledge of her boyfriend's other relationship for her own advancement and starts blending corporate speak with virtue-signaling buzzwords like radical self-honesty. Someone's life normally gets destroyed in the standard template for movies like this, but here, even the most potentially explosive situations unfold in unanticipated ways. Notably, when Jacob and Samuel come face-to-face in a physical clash, in one of two moments when Banderas' gentle-natured nice guy fires up into rage. Jacob makes the disgusted assumption that his wife, because of her power position, must be pulling the strings in a domination-subjugation arrangement. In one of the movie's drollest moments, Samuel casually informs him with unruffled Gen Z self-assurance, "No, that's an outdated idea about sexuality." There are lovely moments between Romy and her daughters, particularly Isabel, a cool young lesbian with a bleached mullet who fooled around on her own girlfriend and uses that experience to reassure her mother that forgiveness is attainable. The brief scene is a very sweet child-parent role reversal. Kidman also gets to show chilly command in a delicious encounter with an oily HR manager, Victor Slezak, who insinuates having compromising knowledge as a stepping stone to hooking up with Romy. Ultimately, Babygirl is about a woman coming to accept that her full spectrum of desires is legitimate and no cause for shame, and that control can be pleasurably elastic rather than something to be held in a vice-like grip. What makes it entertaining is not just the actor's skilled navigation of every tricky challenge, but also the script's refusal of judgment and rigid moral codes. The film doesn't go terribly deep and could stand to be 10 minutes shorter, but it's perverse, juicy fun of a kind we don't get much of anymore. Cozy crime is one thing. Is this a cozy erotic thriller? An apparently super transgressive exercise in workplace sub-dom roleplay, but that is weirdly without any actual emotional or corporate consequence, without the menace that was supposed to make it so exciting. Writer-director Halina Reijn gives us what looks like, and in many ways is, a sex-positive reboot of the 90s high-concept erotic thriller. You might set it alongside Barry Levinson's 1994 film Disclosure about sexual harassment with Michael Douglas and Demi Moore, the twist or op-ed talking point in that case being that it was the woman harassing the man. Nicole Kidman plays Romy, an inspirational CEO of a hugely successful company in the big city, specializing in fulfillment center automated delivery systems. She is married to Jacob, Antonio Banderas, a theater director currently working on a production of Hedda Gabler, Ibsen's play about an unhappy marriage with trendy Ivo Van Hove-type projections on screen. They have 2 teen daughters, 1 queer, 1 apparently straight. Romy and Jacob have a lot of sex, but she can only really climax by rushing off to another room straight afterwards and watching porn on her MacBook. Jacob doesn't seem to wonder where she's got to. Romy's career is sailing along, and interestingly, she is absolutely upfront about the Botox she's getting and endures with motherly exasperation jibes from her daughter about resembling a dead fish. Romy's comfortable world is rocked by meeting the glance of a hot, pert new intern called Samuel, played by Harris Dickinson. He impresses her by subduing a savage dog in the street that seemed about to attack Romy, but doing this so easily you might suspect some kind of scam cooked up with accomplices. With amazing insolence and an expression of bovine curiosity, Samuel comes on to her, his perv spidey sense evidently picking up on her frustration and unhappiness, and makes it clear he'd like something to happen where he's dominant and she's submissive. Romy realizes that being dominated by a young intern whose career and life she could crush at any moment is very exciting, and the amour fou duly kicks off, with the Gen Z Dom awarding his boss the unfeminist endearment, Babygirl. As for Romy's real-world power over him, Samuel hints at what might happen if he went to HR with what's been going on. But this is domination light. The supposed degradation is mostly signaled by the scuzziness of the hotels where they meet. She's presumably paying. In one, Romy actually has to pick a hair off the counter pane. Ooh. She sits down and stands up and goes into the corner and faces the wall when he says so. She has to get down on all fours and lap milk from a bowl. They have straight sex. But really, that's it. We don't get into BDSM. We get nowhere near to needing a safe word. Babygirl is simply about age gap and the reversal of gender power relations. And a further line is crossed, though unsexually, in that time-honored narrative device from the 90s Joe Esterhaas era when the secret lover shows up at the heroine's family country home on various unlikely pretexts. And so the film drifts along to a strangely implausible non-denouement with impermanent effects. She has all the backstory with work and family, and he is weirdly blank in ways that don't feel entirely intended. Romy's ambitious assistant Esme, played by Sophie Wilde from the Australian horror film Talk to Me, looks for a while as if she will provide the grit in the oyster, but it is not really forthcoming, although any old-school ironized twist of culpability and shock might of course be coldly assessed for its implications in the online social media discourse, which is what happened to Emerald Fennell's much more interesting, promising young woman. Kidman has previously played not dissimilar roles in upscale metropolitan locations, in Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut and Jonathan Glazer's Birth. There is nobody better at playing elegant and soigné and sophisticated. But she and Dickinson can't deliver the erotic thrill of actual danger. In interviews, writer-director Halina Reijn has indicated that inspirations for Babygirl included the 80s, 90s psychosexual thrillers of Paul Verhoeven and Adrian Lyne. Consequently, it will come as no surprise that, while watching this movie, one might be reminded of Fatal Attraction and Basic Instinct, although I'd be tempted to throw in a little Zalman King on the side. It's about two damaged and scheming characters dancing around one another, manipulating and counter-manipulating until it's unclear who's really in charge. One area where Babygirl deviates from its antecedents, however, is in its level of violence, or relative lack thereof. The damage here is almost entirely emotional. The one physical altercation is not especially intense, and no bunnies are boiled. The movie explores aspects of female sexuality that many movies made by men avoid. Although at times lurid, Babygirl lacks the fantasy elements evident in 50 Shades of Grey, although the female leads in both films have a fascination with submission in sex. That's not to argue this movie is any more real than the tawdry 50 Shades. The characters often act in certain ways because of the needs of the plot, but there's an honesty to the affair that is compelling. The two leads, Romy, Nicole Kidman, and Samuel, Harris Dickinson, are neither naive nor likable, but they are drawn together like moths to a flame, and their congress causes collateral damage to Romy's family. There's no love or pretense of love, simply a mutual exploration of desires they are unable to express in more conventional relationships. The competent but cool Romy, the CEO of a robotics tech firm, keeps a distance between herself and everyone else at the company except her personal assistant, Esme, Sophie Wilde. She is married to Jacob Antonio Banderas, a theater director, and has two teenage daughters, Isabel Esther McGregor and Nora Vaughn Riley. Although Romy and Jacob share what appears to be an idyllic, loving marriage, she is sexually frustrated. After satisfying Jacob in bed, Romy retires to another room where she watches porn and brings herself to orgasm. Her lack of sexual satisfaction, coupled with fetishistic desires, primarily in the BDSM field, she is afraid to share with her husband, make Romy vulnerable when a self-confident intern, Samuel, shows interest. As soon as Samuel recognizes that her refusals to engage with him might be a smokescreen, he doubles down. Soon, the two are engaged in a frantic affair where the private power dynamic is the opposite of the public one. The threat of exposure and how Reijn approaches it comprises the primary source of tension in the narrative. For Romy, the situation offers double jeopardy. Not only could she lose her job if it came to light that she was having an affair with a subordinate, but if the nature of the sex was revealed, it could tarnish her publicly. Throw in questions of how it might impact her marriage and the collateral damage to her children, especially fragile Isabel, whose self-confident exterior is mostly an act, and Romy has every incentive to keep her torrid encounters with Samuel secret. This posits the question of what she will do in the event that Samuel decides to go public, something he hints at least once, although it's questionable whether he's serious or this is part of the power dynamic role-playing. The movie also questions whether Romy may have an addiction to self-destructive behavior, where the only way she can get off is if she has pushed her situation to the brink of catastrophe. The most praiseworthy aspect of Babygirl is Nicole Kidman's performance. As committed as ever, Kidman dedicates herself fully to the role and crafts a persona who is at times vulnerable and at other times almost predatory. Her approach to Romy keeps us guessing where the story is going and how it will turn out. The ending is one of the least satisfying aspects of the movie. Of the other actors, Dickinson leans into the ambiguities of his character. Samuel is more a force of nature than a fully formed human being. Esther McGregor, Ewan's daughter, caught my attention. Isabel doesn't have a lot of screen time, but McGregor makes the most out of what she's given. The scene in which she asks about Romy's well-being is touching. Babygirl is perhaps not as gloriously, guiltily entertaining as some of the films Reijn used as models, but it offers its own pleasures. If the relationship between Romy and Samuel is implausible, it's no less unlikely than those in many similar pictures from the 80s and 90s. And although violence is kept in the background, the movie isn't afraid to address psychosexual issues in ways that most current mainstream films avoid. It's refreshing to see this sort of story told using the female gaze, since it adds a different dimension to the proceedings. This is a better movie than the trailer might lead one to believe. Babygirl has received a divisive Rotten Tomatoes audience score, setting a shocking record for Nicole Kidman. The erotic thriller, directed and written by Halina Reijn, Bodies, 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 delves into the life of Romy, a powerful tech CEO in New York who embarks on a dangerous and impassioned affair with her younger intern Samuel, Dickinson. The Babygirl cast also features Antonio Banderas and Sophie Wilde, who join Kidman in a story exploring Romy's sexual repression and journey to self-acceptance. Babygirl has a 55% Rotten Tomatoes audience score, making it part of an unexpected trend of audience misfires for Kidman this year. Despite Kidman's compelling performance, which helped the erotic film achieve a 77% Rotten Tomatoes score among critics, the audience response to her recent films, including Netflix's Spellbound and the rom-com A Family Affair, reveals a surprising disconnect for an actor known for her command of acclaimed and award-winning roles. While Babygirl earned critical praise for its exploration of power dynamics and emotional complexity, its 56% audience score underscores a trend of polarizing reactions to Kidman's 2024 movies. Nonetheless, Screen Rant's Alex Harrison gave the erotic thriller a glowing 9 out of 10 review, commending Ryan's wicked sense of humor and the great acting from Kidman and Dickinson, contending the film is fascinating to watch. However, after Spellbound's 51% audience score and A Family Affair's audience score of 30%, both of which fared worse with critics, Kidman's 2024 output highlights a stark divide between her critical acclaim and broader audience reception. Known for embracing unconventional roles, the star has built a celebrated career by taking creative risks with visionary auteurs between high-profile blockbusters. For instance, she followed Robert Eggers' Viking epic The Northman in 2022 with DC's Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom in 2023. Over nearly 4 decades, Kidman has demonstrated her versatility across a wide range of genres. She has made a name for herself by seeking eccentric roles in risky projects like Kubrick's erotic thriller Eyes Wide Shut, 1999, where Babygirl pulls inspiration from, and Baz Luhrmann's Moulin Rouge. While this approach has solidified her reputation as one of the most daring actresses of her generation, it also means that some projects may struggle to resonate with broader audiences. Her 2024 scores thus reflect the challenges of balancing artistic ambition with mainstream appeal. Kidman's 2024 movie year may be defined by divisive audience reactions, but it's also a testament to her fearless commitment to challenging and unconventional roles. With Babygirl, she continues to explore narratives that defy traditional expectations, tackling complex themes with a boldness that has long defined her career. While audience scores suggest a disconnect with some viewers, they also highlight the creative risks Kidman is willing to take in pursuit of an ambitious story. This approach has consistently set her apart in an industry often reliant on formulas, franchises, and adaptations that are more likely to guarantee broad audience appeal. Babygirl sparks conversation with a unique, character-driven story that, as Screen Rant's Harrison notes, forces us to look beyond their easily digestible packaging. Her ability to surprise and challenge audiences remains one of her greatest strengths, proving that taking risks is often the most powerful move an artist can make. Writer-director Halina Reijn attempts to make a bold statement but quickly loses her voice in Babygirl, an erotic thriller that's neither erotic or thrilling. This baffling misfire seeks to say something about sexual freedom and power dynamics. But rather than speak anything profound, it loses itself in what plays like a carnal romp that only occasionally considers such things as ramifications and consequences. And it squanders 3 really good performances in the process. Nicole Kidman bears all and does everything she's asked, playing Romy Mathis, the successful CEO of a robotics company named Tensile. Romy has the same comfortable life as most one-percenters. She lives in a lavish home with her loyal and loving husband Jacob, Antonio Banderas, and their 2 daughters. But Romy is hiding something. She has a kinky side that manifests itself in ways that go from uncomfortable to downright bizarre as the story pushes forward. That's clearly not the interpretation Reijn is looking for, and a more insightful movie might be able to challenge conventional thinking on such things. But Babygirl offers such a shallow examination that it's hard to see beyond its clunky messaging and unintentional contradictions. It tries to avoid any sleazy tags by pointing accusatory fingers in a number of directions, and those efforts lead to an ending that couldn't feel more undeserved. Romy's sordid fantasies begin blending with reality after she meets Samuel, Harris Dickinson, an aggressively flirty new intern at her company. It doesn't take long for the Yale-educated, business-savvy executive to begin making a series of boneheaded decisions to satiate her lust. From there, Reijn chronicles Romy and Samuel's illicit affair, which starts as a psychosexual cat-and-mouse game of seduction before abruptly giving way to a number of prurient trysts. As they attempt, sometimes rather loosely, to keep their affair under wraps, Romy shows passing concerns over consequences, mostly regarding her job and occasionally her family. But Reijn works hard to exonerate Romy of any wrongdoing. Instead, her movie's sentiment is best encapsulated in what Samuel smugly deems to be an outdated idea about sexuality. In Babygirl, the fault lies with society. It's the stigmas, the moral codes. Even Jacob subtly gets some of the blame. With such talent as Nicole Kidman, Harris Dickinson, and Antonio Banderas, Babygirl had the ingredients to be an incisive and thought-provoking erotic thriller. Instead, it takes an unoriginal premise and offers up a one-dimensional examination of sexual liberation. There is some undeniable simmer between Kidman and Dickinson, but their chemistry fizzles once the steaminess turns to schlock. Again, it's a shame considering the quality of talent on screen. Yet the movie's biggest problem lies in how woefully underdeveloped everything is. The characters, the relationships, the motivations, even the themes, it all feels so flimsy. And from a movie that borderlines on haughty in its convictions and its indictments, a more shrewd and well-rounded treatment could have made us think. Babygirl wants to be that movie, but it's more like those 99 rentals that once sat on the back shelf at your local video store. Bookended by orgasms, the first one faked, the latter presumably genuine, Babygirl tells the story of a top female executive exploring sexual and power dynamics. Writer-director Halina Reijn's drama features Nicole Kidman's showy performance as Romy Mathis, the CEO of Tensile, a warehouse robotics efficiency outfit. A workaholic and phone addict, Romy has an idyllic life on the surface. A playwright husband named Jacob, Antonio Banderas, 2 teen daughters, an apartment in the city, a lavish country house, and a position many of her colleagues admire. While Romy thrives on control professionally, she secretly yearns to give up her power to someone else. Perhaps giving power away in a controlled situation will relieve her everyday pressures to maintain that control. Romy has been hiding this curiosity from Jacob, leaving her split between living a so-called respectable but repressed life and wanting to explore what she deems to be dark and obscene desires. When she launches into a dom-sub affair with an office intern, Samuel, Harris Dickinson, she risks everything for sexual gratification. That her family and career hang in the balance is part of the pleasure. Refreshingly free of moralizing by the filmmakers, Babygirl sets out in character study mode and doesn't seem interested in pushing the boundaries of on-screen sex. Despite its mechanical sex scenes and occasionally blunt writing, it's an improvement on the other major BDSM movie involving very wealthy people, 50 Shades of Grey, 2015. Reijn is a better writer than E.L. James and captures her protagonist's inner life, though she leaves many supporting roles underdeveloped. Romy is the sort of character who invites armchair psychoanalysis, and undoubtedly some psychology major will write an interesting paper about her behavior. She first spies Samuel calming a loose dog. Something about how he commands the animal turns her on, and from that moment, she's drawn to him, desperate to be tamed like the dog. Sensing her interest, Samuel sizes her up after minor challenges to her authority. Then he signs up for her company's mentorship program, becoming Romy's mentee in a relationship that leaves their power dynamic in disarray and Romy thoroughly confused by her feelings. Rein's script grapples with a lot. The director of Bodies, Bodies, Bodies 2022 tackles a necessary conversation about sex positivity and not yucking other people's yums. Her writing is sympathetic to Romy's desire, yet it's not blind to how what happens behind closed doors can impact other aspects of life. For starters, there's Romy's family. Married for 19 years, she remains too ashamed to speak to Jacob about what she wants, in part because he seems more interested in conventional intimacy, such as eye contact. At one point, Romy literally hides under the covers to tell Jacob what she wants, and even then, she backs down. By introducing desires into their marriage that some part of her believes are wrong, she worries they may disrupt their outwardly happy appearance. Romy's issues with honest communication also extend to the office, where she plays a volatile game, particularly with her ambitious assistant, Esme, Sophie Wilde from Talk to Me. Reijn confronts the consequences of workplace affairs, particularly concerning the responsibilities of women in power positions. While Babygirl sets up a dangerous situation for Romy, Reijn isn't interested in punishing the character for her choices. It's a positive to be vulnerable, says a marketing director to Romy, not a negative. To be sure, the sex between Romy and Samuel has a kind of openness, humor, and honesty to it. They laugh and have fun while figuring out what they can do for each other. It might even be touching if Romy hadn't betrayed her marriage or if Samuel wasn't such a non-entity. Indeed, Rein's focus on Romy means Samuel is a nothing character who enters her life, unlocks her sexuality, and then disappears all too conveniently. Unfortunately, Rein's script also makes a passing reference to Romy's upbringing in communes and cults, which supplies a vague and unexplained hint that her desires result from some childhood trauma, which denormalizes them. That seems to go against the film's message about sexuality, captured in Samuel's observation. We're like two children playing, and that's natural. For all of its erotic flair, Rein's script too often intellectualizes what might be more effective in emotionally driven scenes. Later in the film, there's an undisguised conversation about whether female masochism is a male construct or if that's a dated idea. Samuel makes observations such as, "I think you like to be told what to do, and it's about giving and taking power," which put too fine a point on what the audience might have intuited from a dramatic scene. These open discussions, which register like a group therapy session, sit on the surface in the dialogue, whereas the story was readable enough without such points being spelled out for us. A somewhat more subtle, tender subplot involves Romy's relationship with her queer daughter, Isabel, Esther McGregor, who's more in tune with her sexuality than her mother. This underscores the notion that younger generations are more open about their sexuality, whereas older generations have been repressed by social, religious, and political factors, all without the dialogue underlining it. Set against the holiday season, Rein's second film for A24 hopes to be a salacious affair reminiscent of Kidman's appearance in the Christmas-time favorite Eyes Wide Shut, 1999. Much of the buzz around Babygirl involves its sex scenes, with words on the movie poster such as raw and fearless to describe Kidman's performance. The 57-year-old actor spends a lot of time on all fours, undressing, getting pushed up against walls, and drinking milk, an unexplained kink for both, while the soundtrack blares amusing choices including Never Tear Us Apart by XS and the awkward Father Figure by George Michael. It's refreshing to see a middle-aged woman's sexuality portrayed in such frank terms, but one gets the impression that Reijn is attempting to shock her viewers, though the sex scenes are far from scandalizing and more psychological. The one true, passionate, even erotic moment occurs when Romy has her first orgasm with Samuel, who knows instinctively to lay her flat on her stomach, the same way she masturbates earlier in the film. Kidman delivers a convincing orgasm performance. It doesn't look or sound like a movie orgasm. It's messy and uninhibited. Rein's formal approach is thoughtful if overt. The score by Cristobal Tapia de Veer often consists of breathy and vocalized notes, as though recorded mid-coitus. Much of the film is shot with crisp cinematography by Jasper Wolf, who deploys no end of shallow focus to convey how Romy has lost perspective on everything else around her. And while Kidman has received much attention, Banderas is excellent as a genial husband whose open-hearted and honest reaction to his partner's betrayal steals the movie. Babygirl is about a complex and enduringly fascinating main character, but its dull literalization of every theme in the dialogue renders the drama inert. There's enough to Romy to build an intriguing case study, yet the psychological motivations seldom feel backed by our emotional involvement. Worse, Reijn delivers an overly tidy, optimistic ending that finds Romy in control of when she has power and when she doesn't, not to mention her marriage repaired and desires fulfilled. The journey to controlling one's power, along with honest communication about desire, is the central message of Babygirl. But the resolution feels far too prescribed and convenient, given the messy situation, leaving the film's overstated themes to be the driving force, not the characters. The younger man was in control and playing on the woman's desires. A big part of that comparison lies in Rein's M scene and how she uses the background to define Samuel's character, much like Brilla did with the character of Theo Dickinson, a hulking figure to begin with. Much like Theo's actor Samuel prowls in the background, while Kidman is in focus intrigued by the young man in the ill-fitting suit, he is like a caged animal, a predator ready to pounce on his prey like a big cat he plays with her at. First messing with her head until that ill-fitting suit comes off a shirtless Dickinson dancing to George Michael's Father Figure, and on the Newson choice that nevertheless works made it seem as if the air conditioning in the screening room had been turned off. For a moment, this slow build-up, first teasing then demanding, is masterfully realized by Reijn, giving their relationship ample time to believably develop. It is a welcome development after the establishing scenes of Rye's work and domestic life are rushed through. The eclectic soundtrack has good needle drops in abundance, from In One Excess, Never Tear Us Apart to Robin's Dancing on My Own, which is again a bit obvious in the context of the scene, Romy taking Robin's role at a party, but somehow works completely the musical piece to Resistance is a lengthy club scene reminiscent of the aforementioned Basic. Instinct, set to a pounding techno track. It's always techno summoned by Samuel. Romy submerges herself in an orgasmic sea of carnality, trying to get to her object of desire. That is a key word for actors in a project. This strong and sexually charged. Nicole Kidman goes through the barrier and bears it all in the film. Totally under Dickinson's control, their scenes are intimate, and then some, and given the nature of these sex acts, her performance is one of those that one calls brave. It takes some guts and indeed trust for an active Cage, as she's 57 in stature, to take on a role like this, to be both an object of sexual desire, a triumph for the sexuality of older women, and of denigration. It is not Kidman's absolute best performance, but it is definitely her most daring, despite being surprisingly low on dramatics and histrionics, which a role like this could have easily devolved into oitis. Confusion, frustration, and lusty fear that are rendered by Kidman with abandon. Opposite her, The lanky, tall figure of Dickinson slips from young kid to dominant alpha male and back with ease. His predatory nature was already touched upon, and the actor's sometimes taut and stern, sometimes boyish. Facial expressions emit a danger, yet at times also confusion that makes his Samuel one of the more interesting characters in recent cinema. The biblical name play not just with his name but also with Jacob's, is part of the fun. But while both lead performances are brilliant in their own right, the dynamic between them, something that is so much needed for a story about power dynamics and sexual tension, is what elevates Babygirl to something far more nuanced than the simple examples mentioned before. Reijn makes sure to write that dynamic into her self-penned screenplay, adding whimsy and frequent touches of humor to break the tension, but also ratcheting up when the suspense needs to be stretched, like a rubber band. The repression of Romy's life, both by what is expected of her as a mother and by her controlled and overscheduled work life, is given release in sometimes provocative but sometimes surprisingly tender moments. This constant fluctuation between emotions keeps Babygirl fresh, and the viewer on their toes, never truly knowing where the story is going. As mentioned, the introduction to RI is too broad, stir, and cliché, and the film's denouement for all. Its feminist fist-pumping moments a bit too tidy after such a messy story, but Reijn's tale of lust, ambition, and morality is ventilating, funny, steamy, and just a damn good time at the theater. With slick production design, playful but focused direction, clever writing, and two central performances that create something bigger than the sum of its parts. Babygirl is an ambitious step up from Reijn's English language debut. Babygirl is a film that takes a concept often explored by male directors 2 to 3 decades ago, but brilliantly adapts it to the current zeitgeist, which means that younger audiences will take to this as well. It is easy to see why A24 picked this up, but probably not the best idea for a family night out. The most seductive sight Babygirl has to offer is Harris Dickinson wearing pleated dress pants and no shirt, lifting Arar-clad Nicole Kidman in his arms while George Michael's father figure blasts on the soundtrack. I don't know that I can do justice to the disorienting appeal of this image. There are plenty of more straightforwardly sexy moments in writer-director Halina Reign's movie, which is about a corporate named Romy Kidman, who embarks on a BDSM-tinged affair with an intern named Samuel Dickinson. Moments when the pair are so worked up they in a restroom, or when Samuel orders Romy to take off her gorgeous column dress while he looks on, or when the camera holds on Romy's shifting expressions as she comes apart during her first non-solo orgasm, but nothing gets at the unabashed nature of Babygirl eroticism. Like that shot of Samuel tenderly cradling his lover like a child after having spent long hours holed up in a hotel room together, indulging in love-making and games of dominance and submission. It feels startlingly private. Two people discovering something about themselves in real time, while we get the singular privilege of watching from the other side of the screen. Babygirl is being billed in some corners as an erotic thriller, though it doesn't insist on the moral consequences that have traditionally been just as central to the subgenre as the steamy clinches Reijn. Late of the underwhelming cool kid horror comedy, Bodies is a Dutch filmmaker who's essentially on a cultural safari through the remnants of American Puritanism, and the only sexual hang-ups she explores are the ones Romy herself has internalized. Babygirl never bothers to genuinely reckon with the damage that could be wrought by the head of a company having an illicit affair with a junior employee. Instead, it approaches its own potentially sordid scenario with a giddy deliriousness. If 2024 has turned out to be the year of the cougar at the movies, Kidman herself has now been paired twice with a leading man over 2 decades younger. What Babygirl has to offer toward the trend is not a tale of punishment, but an adventure into self-discovery that's unabashedly indulgent but always surprising. Romy's an executive of the post-Lean In era, one who wears her hair in tendrils and her power lightly. It's a positive to be vulnerable, not a negative. An underling tells her when she uses the word weakness in a corporate video. And if Romy doesn't entirely buy this, she nevertheless takes the note. She has it all: the high-flying job, the loving husband theater director Jacob, played by Antonio Banderas, and the kids Vaughn Riley and Esther McGregor as daughters Nora and Isabel respectively. If the contradictions are getting to her having to be authoritative while also always being approachable and firm, while also always being soft, it doesn't show until Samuel shows up in the office and SP something inside her. She's previously tried to shut down. What first lights her up is amusingly the way he takes command of an aggressive dog who's gotten away from her owner, his ease, his confidence, and the way he says, "Good girl." Kidman's been on a run of playing overachieving matrons lately, in roles from Big Little Lies to the upcoming The Perfect Couple. What's gratifying about her role in this film is that she starts from that place, then banks so wildly in another direction that she seems perpetually shocked by herself, the idea that someone's needs in the bedroom might diverge from who they are and how they behave outside. It isn't radical, but Babygirl approaches it as though the concept were brand new. It's lovers figuring out what they like as they go. Dickinson is often cast as aloof beauties, objects of desire, rather than characters who actively go after what they want. But Babygirl brings him down to earth. Samuel is old enough to work in a bar on the side while being young enough to get an internship at Rye's warehouse automation company. Babygirl approaches its setting with the endearing vagueness of someone who's read a single Wikipedia entry on New York corporate culture. He's no Christian Grey, though he already has a better sense of what he wants than Romy does their early scenes together. Are fumbling and funny, in part because neither of them knows what they're doing. But even more than that, because Romy gets drawn in by her own desires only to turn around and act outraged at what's happening. The generational difference between Babygirl's lovers isn't just an act of provocation. Ours a product of her era, having had to learn to be one of the boys and then to figure out what it means to be a leader who's a woman, and written in all the acred scar tissue on her heart from those experiences is a certainty that what she wants is shameful and degrading. Babygirl isn't really a romance, and it's better for it, even if the film ends on a note that feels a little too neat for the vivid messiness of everything that comes before. It's a self-love story, and part of that discovery is that it's okay to let yourself be small for a while. More than okay, it might turn out to be pretty hot extra information. When I heard that Nicole Kidman hadn't watched Babygirl back, and the first time she'd be watching it would be at the Venice Film Festival premiere, I knew we were going to be in for quite the ride. As the lights went down and the opening credits rolled, the first thing we saw on screen, Kidman's character panting with pleasure with her husband Jacob, played by Antonio Banderas, and it only gets hotter and spicier from there. Nicole Kidman plays a powerful CEO, Romy, who engages in a forbidden affair with an alluring and much younger and Samuel, played by the Pat Ironclaws Harris Dickinson. Romy seems to have it all: a sleek and glamorous job at a robotics firm, a handsome theater director of a husband and 2 teenage daughters, a beautiful home in the New York suburbs, but she still feels as though something is missing from her life, in particular her sex life, as passionate and heady as sex is with her husband Jacob. The opening scene immediately tells the audience that it's not all what it seems to be. On the surface, as soon as Romy has had sex with her husband, we see her run off to another room in the house to masturbate to domination-based pornography. But then she meets Samuel Dickinson's character. Is suave, confident, and sometimes even commanding, but there's also an element of awkwardness and nervousness to him. With longing glances and meetings in basement rooms in the office, the build-up to this affair is packed with tension and anticipation. We see Romy battling with her inner self, debating whether to follow her desires and go down this road with Samuel or attempt to repress her sexual fantasies of domination. But one night in a hotel room, and she finally gives in to her sexual desires. Their affair sees Rye regularly commanded and dominated by Sam, where in one scene Sam orders his boss a pint of milk at a work drinks event as a power play. And in another scene, Romy is half nude drinking milk from a dog bowl in a hotel room while Sam looks on. It's a story of control power dynamics and sexuality that may not fit the typical norm. Kidman is effectively playing two parts, the confident and dominant and the submissive lover, and she succeeds in both delivering one of her best and most daring performances in years. The film is directed by Halina Reijn, who made her English language directorial debut with a 24 satirical horror Bodies, which was a critical and commercial success. Reijn has a raw and neon war thriller style to this film. That means we get to see the undignified reality of this affair behind all the beauty and glamour. And even though the ending may be a little too neat and clear-cut for the film's messiness, it's definitely no Hollywood happy ending. She beds him, but thinks of someone else, someone who will fulfill her sexual fantasies, what she can't get at home. She'll get elsewhere. Must be easy for female viewers to plug into this desire. A longing that's been the basis for countless romance novels, the kind with Fabio airbrushed on the front and worn pages from late-night reading. It's a notion Dutch actress turned writer-director Helen Reijn has fashioned into a romantic, erotic, and tepid sex story. The setup is better than the payoff in this age of 50 Shades of Grey. The sex play isn't really outrageous, and as forbidden office relationships and emotional power plays go 2023, as fair play is much more cutthroat in that turbulent film, enraged hedge fund executives burned up bedrooms and boardrooms. Romy Nicole Kidman is a high-powered CEO of a company she built from scratch. On the surface, she has everything: money, children, and a caring husband, Jacob Antonio Banderas. Why would she want more? But she does. Can't quite put her finger on it. But if she's masturbating alone at night, something is missing when Esme Sophie Wilde talked to me, her second in command, introduces her to the latest crop of interns. One stanza out the tall, lanky Samuel Harris Dickinson, the Iron Claw, he insinuates himself into a mentorship with Romy when she'd never volunteered her time. She protests. He insists with cunning manipulation, with tricks and traps that force her hand. A risky office relationship turns into a sadomasochist affair supply closet's hotel. Rooms, bedrooms, commands power domination. Can he really make her get on all fours and lick milk out of a saucer against her will or for her pleasure? Samuel, I think you like to be told what to do. You think the premise and plotting sound quite risk, but the love scenes are modest by today's standards. The full nudity is reserved for women and not men. It's all tasteful, but not raunchy. The erotic games Reijn conjure are certainly stronger than what you can view on a soap opera, but that is what this story feels like the soap The Young and the Restless, but with nudity. Not nearly as softcore as a Cinemax erotic series or as demonic as the dangerous sex play in films like The Night Porter. Everything looks modern, clean, and sterile. The production design, Stephen Carter art direction, Molly Mula, and costumes, Kurt and Bart play into the contemporary feel. The coldness is documented by cinematographer Jasper Wolfe, with music that shapes scenes. Composer Crystal Tapia-Dare and editing Matthew Hannum that makes astute cuts. The direction plays out what is written on the page. It's up to the cast to make this marriage gone wrong. A fair-headed in a bad direction. Adult romantic drama sweat like a hoose on a Saturday night. They're just too timid to go all the way wild, as coy as the smart underling waiting for a chance. Banderas, as the theater director's spouse, exhibits the patience of Job, as the husband's masculinity and ability to please his wife come under attack. Rye whines, "I've never had an orgasm with you, Dickinson." Looks a bit ordinary to be the one who tempts a woman twice his age into liaison, that red dangerous of all the young actors in the world, to play the devil's irresistible advocate. Why him, Kidman? Looks the age and FS the successful executive. Well, she goes the extra mile. to make Rye, the unsatisfied midlife crisis parent, believable in a 7-year way that quite often is reserved for men middle-aged husbands seeing sex as a youth regaining elixir. Is played out women doing it as a fresh endeavor. Kidman interprets the ups and downs in powerless and empowered moments like a seasoned actor trying to understand the soul of a career-orientated woman who feels something is missing when threatened by a rival male executive. Roy stands firm. If I'm going to be humiliated, I'm going to pay some man to do it for all its love-making awkward. Confrontations, treachery, and angst. This movie is tamer than some will wish read. Hot, but never white hot. Never hot enough to burn the eyeballs. Never going into X-rated territory here. In this instance, the office power plays and mind games are more interesting than watching the missionary positions on view, which is not ideal for an erotic thriller. This film, directed by Halina Reijn, written by Halina Reijn, produced by David Hinojosa. Halina Reijn, Julia starring Nicole Kidman, Harris Dickinson, Sophie Wilde Antonio. Banderas cinematography, Jasper Wolf, edited by Matthew Hannum, music by Crystal Tapia de production companies, 24 Toim, Man Up Films, distributed by 24. Release dates, August 30th, 2024 in Venice, December 25th, 2024 in United States. Running time, 114 minutes, country United States, language English. So guys, this is the review of Babygirl movie and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting. And if you like this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.